So, is it working? Yeah, it is. So, what I'm going to be talking about is how the banking system works, why it's really dangerous the way it works now, and how we can fix it. So, let's start off by a quick example. So, let's say I want to send some money to someone in the US. So, the first thing I do, I go to the bank, and I give the banker my cash. What the banker does then is he edits a database where he says how much money I added to my account. What he then does is he adds the money into a vault or locks it up in a vault, and then what he does is he creates a new transaction. So banks use a system called SWIFT to communicate with each other. So it's basically like a messaging program that says move this money there from there. So if I'm lucky, my friend in the US has a bank that is actually a partner of my bank, and the transaction there is pretty simple. So once the bank receives the message, he is credited the sum I sent him, and he can start using the money. However, it's not always as simple. So let's say those two banks are not partnering banks. So what the SWIFT system has to do then is they have to find an intermediary that is the partner of a bank where I want to send the money to. Sometimes it doesn't work out on the first try, so they look for another bank. So basically your money goes through 3 different banks until it arrives at the destination. Plus, at the end of the day, the money actually physically has to be transferred from one place to another, which is pretty, I'd say, complicated. And as I've already said, the whole process is slow, it's expensive, and it's really complicated. But that's just the least of it. So that's why your transfers take 4 to 5 days internationally. And we're not mentioning these guys yet. So what happens if these guys touch the system? Probably something like this. And if they touch the SWIFT system, which is actually the key component of the banking system, it gets even worse. So if someone manages to hack SWIFT, all money flow will stop. So the economy will slow down, stocks will crash, and what happens to the world when there is an economic crisis? Most likely war. People will be fighting for food, basic needs, stuff like that, and I think at the stage we're in right now, if a major economical crisis hits us, it might actually really cause a huge war. And that's actually what also economists say. So economists now believe that the next financial crisis is not going to be caused by the economy not working properly, rather it's going to be caused by someone hacking the central banking system and the money not moving anywhere. So let's take a look at the pain points of the current system. So first of all, there's human error, right? So when you go to the bank and you give your money to the banker, what keeps him from writing something completely different in the database? Basically nothing. He has a bad day, he doesn't like you. Of course there are some control mechanisms in the background which should prevent him from doing this, but technically it's possible. Another thing is, as I've already said, again, banks can be hacked, and in fact that happens every day. You probably don't hear about it too much because the banks don't want you to know about it, but banks get hacked every day, and the only reason you don't hear about it is because they don't want to lose their clients. And of course, as we still have to deal with physical money somewhere in the background, banks can also get robbed, right? So we can lose our money like that as well. And as I've already said, if SWIFT gets hacked, we're totally screwed. So wouldn't it be very nice to just have one central bank, one central ledger of transactions to keep all of the money that's in circulation and to keep track of it all? How easy would it be to just send money to your friend directly so he receives it in a few minutes? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where cryptocurrencies and the blockchain come in. So imagine blockchain as a sort of decentralized bank that is owned by no one. So no guys in suits, no greedy people, no one messing with you. It's owned by you. All of the people who do something with crypto are the owner of the bank. Okay, so with cryptocurrencies, the blockchain is actually the database that contains all the ingoing and outgoing transactions. So basically, the whole system is much simpler, right? Compared to the diagram I showed before. It's way simpler, it's much more efficient, it's faster. But how do we make sure that this doesn't get hacked equally as someone would hack a bank? First of all, copies of the blockchain. So the blockchain is the central ledger of all the transactions that are going on. The blockchain is stored in numerous places in the world. So probably you have heard of Bitcoin mining, right? So what the miners actually do are they process the transaction. So they download the copy of the blockchain and they add on to it. And they stay in sync, of course. So this is what a conventional bank database looks like. It's just this huge file containing information about all the transactions, and it's not much more than that. Of course, banks have backups somewhere, but to be honest, it's not really complicated to hack a bank, and it's not really complicated to destroy all of the records. And can you imagine what would happen if everyone lost track of how much money they have in the bank, everyone lost track of what's the down payment on their house, everyone lost track of their whole financial life. So that's pretty bad, right? So let me explain how the blockchain works and how the blockchain makes it possible, or how the blockchain keeps itself safe. So with the blockchain, you don't have a single huge file with all the transactions. Rather, you have multiple files chained together, and those files are called blocks. So the way it works, a first block is created at the beginning of a new cryptocurrency. The first block is called the Genesis block. And once it gets filled with transactions, because there are limits on how much you can actually fit in that file, a new block is created. And the first thing that is actually written into the second block is the digital fingerprint of the first block. The digital fingerprint is truly unique to all of the files. It's basically a cryptographic function that is able to, basically the cryptographic function will always return the same value or the same fingerprint for the same file. So if you tamper with a cryptographic function, or with a file, the cryptographic function will return a different value for that file. So basically, it's a digital fingerprint, and all the files only have one fingerprint. So the second block gets filled with transaction. So does the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and this just goes on. So what happens when a hacker tries to tamper with a database? So let's say a hacker wants to edit a transaction, so he adds more money to his account. So basically, he tampers with the central block, but then what happens, the fingerprint of the fourth block doesn't match the fingerprint of the block that has been tampered with. And if the system detects that this was going on, it just invalidates all the blocks following the tampered block, including the tampered block, and it just downloads a copy, a fresh copy from a backup from around the world. So basically, it's pretty hard to hack this. So as I've said, the blockchain is a ledger of all the transactions, and all cryptocurrencies have their own blockchain. Of course, there are some cryptocurrencies which share a blockchain, but I think that's too complex to get into right now. So this is basically all it takes to get money from place A to place B. And now compare it to this. So you can see the difference in complexity, and the more complex a system is, the more vulnerable it is. And again, this is a ticking time bomb. As I've said, sooner or later someone will figure out how to hack Swift and how to cause some real damage, and at that point we're all screwed. So compared to that, crypto is fast, it's reliable, and it's transparent, and it's very hard to hack. So the cryptographic functions, which basically create the fingerprints of the blocks, are so complex it would require around 1,000 years for all the computers together combined to hack the cipher. So basically, it's unhackable unless you own a quantum computer, and if you own one, contact me, please, because definitely cool technology. So you're probably wondering how you get started with cryptocurrencies, and it's really very simple. So first of all, you need a wallet. A wallet is basically your bank account. A wallet consists of two things. One is your public key, and one is your private key. The public key is comparable to your bank account number or the IBAN or something like that, and the private key is your password. So you're never supposed to give someone your password, so your private key has to really remain private to you, because once you lose access to that private key, you have no way of accessing your cryptocurrency. I actually know a guy who, I think 5 years ago, bought a ton of Bitcoin when it was worth nothing, and now the Bitcoin is worth 20 million, and he doesn't remember the private key, so he's basically screwed.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he tried to get, I think, hypnotized to make him remember how he where he wrote it down, but of course it didn't work. But then again, this guy founded a cryptocurrency as well, and now he's probably way richer than that, so not a big loss for him, I'd say, but still 20 million, come on. So security experts even recommend writing this down on a piece of paper, not printing it, and storing it somewhere in a safe place, let's say a bank safe or something like that. It's not even safe to share your private key by WhatsApp or iMessage or write it anywhere in your phone, because again, these can be hacked, and once someone hacks your phone and gains access to the private key, there's no point of being on the blockchain, right? Because again, you're really vulnerable. So to get started with cryptocurrencies, the easiest way to get cryptocurrencies right now is to either mine them, which is not as easy, or you can get them at an exchange. So basically how you exchange stocks for money, you can exchange cryptocurrencies for money. So Coinbase is a pretty simple exchange you can get started with, and where you can buy your cryptocurrency. And here is a list of a few cryptocurrencies that are really interesting right now. So what I do, I trade Ethereum, Neo, Cardano, Stellar, Waves. It's really very interesting projects. They have a good potential, I think. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is maybe the gold of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin, at this point, Bitcoin was founded in 2009, and at this point, Bitcoin is already Stone Age technology. It's slow, it's big, and transactions take time because no one expected it to actually be so popular as it's today. There are a few coins I wouldn't recommend touching. It's Litecoin and Ripple, basically because they seem pretty much scammy, although they have a pretty high market cap, which means they're worth a lot. But I think sooner or later someone will figure out it's a scam, and they will crash, so no point in investing your money there. And of course, you still have like the crypto community that creates just fun coins. Dogecoin, preferred by Shibas, Gopnik coin, preferred by Gopniks, stuff like that. So let me see how much time I have left. I actually have pretty much time left. So there's one more interesting technological aspect of what crypto provides, and it's called smart contracts. Smart contracts are essentially digitized contracts that cannot be broken. So let's imagine how would you use a smart contract in today's world. So right now, if you try to buy a car of someone, what you basically would do is go to a notary, and you'd put out your cash, and the guy would sign an agreement saying that he sold the car. And once the agreement is signed and the cash has been transferred, the notary will hand you the access keys to the car. So the way you could do this with smart contracts is that smart contracts are actually lines of code. They're actually little programs that are deployed on the blockchain, so they're not changeable after they are basically signed, let's call it. And they're capable of holding money. So you don't need an intermediary. You don't need someone in the middle who can mess it up. So basically, how the sale process of a car would work is that you would sign a smart contract with the other guy selling the car, saying that if the smart contract receives 10 Bitcoin, and if the smart contract receives a key to the car, we just switch them. And this way, there is no one in the middle who can actually mess things up, and it becomes very safe and secure. And as I've already said, these smart contracts are not changeable. So yeah, that's it, I think, and I really hope that all of you will start considering using cryptocurrencies in your daily lives. I know it's pretty hard by now, but I think the situation should get better, and I think this is really the technology of the future. I really think banks are already starting to realize how vulnerable they are, and they're trying to come up with their solutions. So make sure you check out more about crypto, and that's it. Thank you, guys.